Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Finance Assessment of Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council, a public meeting which is being recorded. Communications have been tested in the room. The recording will be available on the Borough Council's website. I would remind members to use their desktop microphone when invited to speak by myself, and the standards of behaviour for meetings apply as set out in the Council's standing orders. If members of the public are present, I welcome those in the public gallery here today. I would ask that they follow any guidance and instructions given by me or by officers present. Mobile phones should be switched off or set to silent. There are no planned fire drills.
Microphone's not on, so we might need to just start again. Tap it once, just press it once.
I don't have to keep.
No, tap it once. Press it once, allow.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Finance Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee meeting of Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council, a public meeting which is being recorded. Communications have been tested in the room. The recording will be available on the Borough Council's website. I would remind members to use their desktop microphone when invited to speak by myself, and that standards of behaviour for meetings apply as set out in the Council's standing orders. If members of the public are present, I welcome those in the public gallery here today and would ask that they follow any guidance and instruction given by me or by officers present. Mobile phones should be switched off or set to silent. There are no planned fire drills during this meeting, and fire exits are clearly marked. In the event of the alarm activating, please follow directions by staff. As chairman of the Finance Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee, my role is to ensure that this council is transparent, financially responsible, and delivering value for the people of Newcastle under Lyme. Tonight, we will scrutinise the council's finances, the performance of our services, and the management of our assets. Our job is not to rubber stamp reports, it is to challenge, question, and ensure that taxpayers' money is being used wisely and effectively. I expect clear, evidence-based answers from officers, and I expect action where performance is falling short. Our residents of Newcastle under Lyme deserve a council that is efficient, accountable, and focused on results. With that in mind, let's proceed to the agenda. Item 1 of the agenda is apologies. I have received an apology from Simon Tagg, who has nominated Joan Wielden as a substitute. I've also received an apology from Graham Shaw. Do we have any other apologies? Item 2 of the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Item 3 of the agenda is the meetings of the previous meeting. Are we happy to approve those as a true record of the meeting? No. Okay, yes? No. Item 4 of the agenda is the Finance and Performance Review Report, which will be presented by the Section 151 Officer, Craig Turner, and the Service Director for Strategy, People and Performance, Georgia Evans Steadwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce the finance part of the report and then I'll pass over to Georgie for the performance part. So the council finished 25-26 in a stable financial position, achieving £115,000 revenue surplus against a £19.7 million budget. Strong planning income, investment interest and reduced borrowing costs helped offset income pressures in leisure, parking and bereavement services. Capital investment remained a major focus, with 27.3 million spent on regeneration, town deal and community projects. Whilst capital expenditure was below the £36.2 million programme, most of the variance reflects projects being reprofiled into the current financial year rather than reductions in scope. The Audit and Standards Committee was presented with the Council's draft statement of accounts for 25-26 on Monday. They were reviewed and published ahead of the statutory deadline. I think if I can just sum up in a little sentence, overall, the year demonstrates sound financial management, compliance with statutory deadlines, and continued momentum on key regeneration priorities. I'll pass over to Georgie, and Georgie can introduce the performance data to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. So you'll have before you the Q4 performance report. This relates to indicators based around achievement of the 2022 to 2026 council plan, and they use business intelligence tools to automate, monitor and analyse that performance. We have a set number of key performance indicators, and the report provides evidence around the measurement of those, but also trend reports, so we can see how we're doing between quarters and also year on year. Where you'll see contextual performance, that's where we don't have a target, but it's interesting and useful for us to know what's going on in those particular areas. There might be things that we can't directly influence ourselves, but things that we monitor in terms of, again, the priorities around the council plan. The report contains a total of 49 indicators. 16 of those were contextual, as I've just said, and 62% of the indicators show an improvement or maintenance when compared to the previous year's performance. There's a number of indicators which have not met their performance, and you'll see in the report where that shows an improvement on previous years, or indeed where that trend is negative, and we can see in the report the narrative around some of the reasons why that might be in terms of those performance indicators. Overall, it's a really positive document. We are performing well in all of our services, and we'll look to continue that in the next financial year. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
It's not a question. It's just that on, oh God, what page is it? 3, top of page 3. Whilst I agree that Wally's Quarry is dour, a good old Scottish word, I think it means odour. Wally's Quarry dour problem. Dour, I think you'd say in Scotland. Got it? It's just a typo. I'm just being picky. Ex-English, you see. Yeah. But it is dour anyway.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. Never let it be said I let an opportunity slip by to criticise the former site operator at Wally's Quarry, or indeed the government agency that was supposed to be supervising it. But if you look at the content of that, typo aside, it is genuinely scandalous what has gone on there. And if I may read a little bit from the report narrative. The Environment Agency reported that Wally's Quarry Limited, the former site operator, deposited a single discrete pile of waste in the northwestern corner of the site outside the landfill cells. And it goes on to say samples were taken from the waste to determine its composition and the most appropriate method for managing any risk. The EA updated their webpage with the sample results and confirmed that the waste must be treated as hazardous waste and will need to be removed and sent to an appropriately authorised supervised facility. This is just one pile of waste, and they only agreed to sample it because it was sitting in a discrete pile outside of the cells. This scrutiny committee and other committees of this council have in the past asked for them to do much more as the national regulator of this site, and they refused on several occasions to take core samples. And I believe the reason for that is that they'd have discovered that most of the contents of Wally's quarry is contaminated with hazardous material. It is absolutely outrageous the way that site was run, and it's outrageous the way the Environment Agency over a long number of years failed to regulate it properly. Welcome this report tonight, because this council is extremely well run, which is what our officers are telling us. We're in a good condition. We were as poorly run as the Environment Agency were, we would be disbanded. And if we were as poorly operated as the site operators, the former operators at Wally's Quarry, we would deserve to be prosecuted. It's an absolute scandal. And I would hate for the moment to pass by for us to say, oh goodness, there's a spelling mistake on page 9, without actually interrogating the contents of that. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions?
Yes, just on one of the, thank you. The absenteeism, high level, just wondering how that affects the team and cost implications for stand-ins, contractors to take over their work.
So the absent rate is higher than we'd like, but what you'll see is actually a positive trend in that over the past couple of years. So we're making a lot of progress in terms of reducing that. That said, it is higher than we'd like it to be. We are managing it carefully. All managers understand and are trained in our absent management process, and that is followed pretty consistently across the organisation. The main reason for our absence is longer term absence. At the moment, that does fluctuate across different quarters, but at the moment that seems to be our higher one. And you'll see the reasons for that in our well, actually it's not in this report, but we have got a breakdown of reasons around that, and a lot of them are musculoskeletal or indeed some mental health conditions, which by their nature result in longer term absence. Now, given we're a small council, those numbers push that percentage up higher anyway. But we are putting measures in to support people with that. Plenty of initiatives around supporting mental health, but also we've now developed an in-house physio service where people can be referred and get seen very quickly, who can give us advice around any adjustments that are needed to bring people back into work, and also give us advice around how long people will be out of work for. In terms of our agency spend in relation to that, we don't routinely backfill absentee colleagues, but where we do, that will include some agency spend, yeah.
Do you want to? Councillor Wheeldon?
Thank you. I think the KPIs referred to at the beginning of this report indicate that with such a diverse area to actually organise and deal with on a day-to-day basis, Newcastle under Lyme Borough Council should be held up as an exemplar for all others to follow, because the KPI achievement is absolutely off the Richter scale. If you look at 2.4 of the report, it sets out exactly what the achievements are. And whilst there isn't 100%, I don't know of any organisation I've ever worked for that gets 100% in any event, but they are amazingly high, and we should all pat ourselves on the back and say what a sense of achievement it gives us, because they're so good. That's down to not just the officers and the councillors that are here tonight, but those who've gone before as well. Some staff who've changed, and also some councillors who've changed. And I just think it bodes well for the future to have such a good basis on which to build.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon. Councillor Troy?
Thank you very much, Chair. Is it in order for me to ask something about the pension fund at this stage? I noticed that, which I welcome the fact the pension fund, which is obviously part of, I think, of the county council pension fund, is in surplus at the moment, and that's a welcome change from other organisations I've been involved with, where pension fund deficits have been a major problem. But what I wanted to ask is, given that I'm new again to this council, what has been the situation over the last few years, and have we seen major fluctuations between a surplus and a deficit? Because this often has a major impact on council finances. I will reserve to maybe have a couple of follow-up questions, but thank you.
So yeah, the pension fund is in a surplus position at the moment. It's got a 142% funding level. 3 years ago, it was in a surplus position. Prior to that, it was in a deficit. So with it being in a 142% funding level, it will take an awful lot for it to go back to a deficit. It would take a massive downturn in the economy. So based on that, that's allowed us to reduce our pension contributions for the current year. That was in the savings for 26-27. It made us a £744,000 saving per year, and that will continue for the next 3 years until the next triannual valuation.
With your permission, Chair, I welcome that, and I think it makes sense. It obviously made sense and continues to make sense to adjust pension contributions accordingly. However, experience in the past, particularly in the 1990s, is that these things can rapidly change round, and even with 140% funded fund, you can end up within a couple of years in deficit, particularly if we see a crash in stock markets, because we have seen, I would say, a bit of a bubble in the past 2 or 3 years. So you say that there's a plan for 3 years reduction. Is that a flexible plan, so that if the council sees that asset values are going down quite sharply, that can be halted, so that we don't end up with a deficit? Thank you.
Yeah. So one thing that the Staffordshire Pension Fund does well is it limits the reductions and increases that we have in our pension contributions to 1% per year. So for this time, because of the large surplus, they've allowed us to take the 3-year reduction, so 1% times 3% for the 3 years. If we get moved to a deficit position, that funding contribution will just increase by 1% per year, so there's not massive fluctuations to the council. It's completely discretionary. If we wish to increase our contributions significantly, we can do.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the answer, and my congratulations to the trustees of the fund that it is in that position, because, as I say, that's not been the case necessarily in the past. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping this is the right time to ask this question, and it's definitely not influenced at the fact that I used to work there. But now that the main pool at Jubilee is open, at Jubilee 2, have membership and membership rates and the income started to actually recover as expected?
They've recovered quite significantly. One of the good things that the staff that managed J2 did was not cancel memberships, they froze them. So the minute everything's up and operational again, memberships have been unfrozen and pretty much back to the level they were before. They're a little down, but in terms of recovery, certainly a lot quicker than it might otherwise have been.
Yeah, my other question is regarding planning income. So the planning application income was much higher than expected this year. Was this mainly due to a few large developments or general increase in planning activity?
There were a few major applications, which planning income's quite cyclical. So we had a very good year last year. Those major applications don't come along, then our income might drop off quite significantly. But then then the year after it'll probably jump back up. So we set the budget based on an average over the last 6 years. So it allows for those fluctuations.
Councillor Wheeldon.
I think if it's any help, this is just one report and it's a quarter. And you have to look at the other reports that give the other quarters to contextualise it. And then you can understand exactly what's been going on much better if you look at it as a whole instead of just taking one isolated quarter. It puts everything into much better perspective. There are videos so you can do your homework. God, that was cheeky, wasn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to waste services, and forgive me if I've misinterpreted any of the information first time, we're forecasting a £270,000 overspend. Bearing in mind that the recycling rates have missed their targets because of seasonal garden waste topics, are there any specific actions that could be taken to reduce costs such as agency staff overtime to pull back that overspend?
So waste services is a bit different than some of the scenarios Georgie referred to in terms of sickness. So with it being a frontline service, if one of the bin guys or ladies rings in sick, then we need to replace them with agency. So it's quite a pressurised area in terms of agency staff, but there's a hell of a lot of work that's gone into the sickness levels, as Georgie's referred to, much better absence management in that service. So agency spend is reducing. Waste have some money set aside from some government grant that we had that can help to cover our shortfalls, and that grant's to be used to improve the service, look at how we can do the routes better and things like that. So that forecast overspend should come down this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, just going back to the Jubilee 2 roof repairs, I've seen a figure of £326,000 for the repair. Was that part of the latent defect fund? Who's actually paid for that? Is that ourselves or?
The council paid for that. The roof is outside of its warranty period now, so the J2 is now 15 years old. Believe it or not, that seems an awful long time. I can remember it being built, so it makes me feel even older than I am. But yeah, the council have paid for it. The warranty had expired, and if we look at the lives of buildings, J2 is a bit of a different beast because of the humidity and the water in the building. So it does cause rusting and rotting a little more than an industrial unit would. So yeah, we've picked up the bill for that.
Sorry, going back to that. So to be more specific, it's a swimming pool and that was designed. Certainly I think I remember seeing somewhere that the materials it was looked at and said it was not fit for purpose, not fit for purpose, that's wrong. Materials used were not good enough at the time. So as a defect, it was noted as a defect, and that would gone into a latent defect period. And it's only 15 years old. I mean, the roof of my house is nearly 150 years old. So an expected life cycle for a roof is, I'd say, suggest more than 15 years. I'm just wondering what recourse we have, or why we have, if there's a legal route, or have we tried that avenue regarding back towards the original builder?
Yeah. So before the works were undertaken, every option was pursued in terms of being able to recover any money from the contractor that built it, Morgan Sindall. But that's the situation we found ourselves in. We had legal advice around it as well. But yeah, the bill unfortunately came up on the council to fund.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. Car parking has become increasingly more expensive in the town because of the increases. Do we have any evidence that the recent parking increases are discouraging visitors from coming into the town, which could be borne out by the lack of footfall that the town centre is seeing? Do we think that the regeneration programmes that are ongoing will start to see this in recovery?
Yeah, so if I take the first part of the question first about parking. So all hourly rates within the town centre were frozen as part of the budget setting for 26-27. So there were no increases in hourly parking within the town centres. Parking income is continuing to recover. So for the first quarter of this financial year, from a few figures I looked at earlier, it's better than it was for the first quarter of last year. The regeneration projects, we're going to have 300 and something new properties right within the town centre. So at the very least, there's 300 people, isn't there, if they're all single occupancies, right in the middle of our town, spending their money in the town, using car parking permits. So it'll be a real boost to the town, one that I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you. Any other questions? Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just following the question and from Councillor Walton and the reply, I just wondered if there are any lessons to be learned in terms of building contracts that are currently undergoing or being undertaken or will be undertaken in the future in terms of long tail liabilities such as that. I wonder if any work has been done just to assess that. I realise that you can't foresee absolutely everything, but sometimes we can learn the lessons and make sure that our successors have, if you like, more tighter contracts in the future, or we can even tighten the ones that are going through at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think J2's a bit isolated on its own, given the use of the building. We don't tend to have many problems with other contracts, but I'm sure it'll certainly be in the back of everybody's mind the next time we enter into any further building contracts.
So, with your permission, Chair, could I ask that this be written down, as it were, so that it's there for the future? Because much as we all like to think we're all going to be here in 20 years' time, most of us won't be, and therefore these lessons need to be incorporated in institutional memory. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Wielden.
It's her again. I think as far as the swimming pool is concerned, you have to look at industry norms, and that is not a normal building. It's wet most of the time, and therefore you would have to compare it not with a building of, say, a block of flats or something like that. You'd have to look at other pools that were built and what the in industry the uptime is for the materials used, and very often they do need replacing and they do need a lot of care because of the ingress of water all the time, and the fact that it's not just water, it's the chlorine, it's the chemicals and everything else that goes with it, if that's helpful.
Any other questions? Councillor Rees-Lee.
Yeah, sorry, it's not really a question, but just to kind of add on to Jubilee, they did used to actually have sauna and steam room there before I started working there, but I think they got rid of them due to the issues that was causing, so that could be kind of related to the building itself, so I don't know if that adds any information.
Any other questions? Okay. As a new chair and also indeed as a new councillor, standing in the situation, I have a few questions for Craig or section 151. Topic 21 next. Okay. As a new chair and indeed a new councillor, and to allow me to gain an understanding of the situation, I've got a few questions for Craig, our 151 officer. Firstly, touching on what Councillor Rifoy mentioned regarding the pension scheme. We have a £52.838 million surplus at the triennial review, which is substantial and indicates that the funds exceed liabilities. Is the surplus structural, which is driven by long-term growth and prudent assumptions, or cyclical, benefiting from temporary market gains? If it's the latter, is the council prepared to reverse course if necessary at the next valuation? And leading on from that, how is the surplus being used? Is it offsetting future liabilities or just reducing contributions?
Okay, so I think I answered a couple of your questions when I answered Councillor Lefroy. Surplus has enabled us to have reduced contributions and produced pretty much £750,000 a year saving. In terms of the surplus, a bit of both in terms of being based on future assumptions and its current performance. Our actuary, they perform something like 500, I think it's 555 different scenarios when they're calculating what the surplus is. So lots and lots of work, and they are incredibly pessimistic as actuaries. So they pick the worst case scenario for pretty much everything, and given those worst case scenarios and the number of assumptions they have applied, they've still come out in a surplus position. So I think certainly for the next 3 years that surplus position is going to be as is, and then we'll know more in 3 years' time when the revaluation takes place.
Thank you. Regarding the financial stability, are we financially sustainable over the next 3 years?
Yes. That was a closed question going back to our training, wasn't it? I'll expand though. So our accounts are audited every year by external auditors, KPMG. So as part of their review, they ensure that our finances and accounts present a true and fair view of the council's finances. They review the council's financial sustainability and the provision of value for money services for residents. We've received a positive opinion from KPMG on all 3 strands of their work for 24-25. And then the audit of the 25-26 accounts that were published on Tuesday will commence very shortly. In my mind, the real key indicator of the council's financial sustainability is the MTFS. So we're required as a council to set a balanced budget each year. The MTFS highlights pressures that we'll face over the next few years if we're still here, largely in terms of inflation, pay awards and government funding, and then savings and strategies to offset those. The MTFS that was approved under the previous administration in February gave pretty much a balanced position. Well, it gave a balanced position for the current year and pretty much a balanced position for the following 3 years. So a really positive position to be in. The MTFS is refreshed continually. So at the meeting in September, this committee will present a refreshed MTFS that will include revised assumptions around inflation, pay awards, etc. But it will also include things that the new administration are highlighting as priorities and potential savings. We can scrutinise that a lot more at the September meeting.
Thank you. What do you foresee as the biggest risks to our financial position?
Revenue budget-wise, the biggest risk I would say would be costs associated with local government reorganisation. So they're costs that at the moment we just don't know. We can make lots of estimates, lots of assumptions, but until we're really into the meat of it, those costs may be much higher than what we thought, or they might not be anywhere near as much, but it's a risk. We've got about £400,000 set aside at the moment in a reserve. I'd hope that would get us through any work that's needed to be done between July and March of next year, but that might be something that we need to move some money around within our reserves to cover. So other risks that the council faces financially, so things like losses of income, bad debts, inflation being higher than what we've assumed, interest rates on borrowing increasing, or staff sickness levels. They are all covered by risks that we assess as part of our general fund reserve. So there's a reserve set aside as £2.225 million in that is entirely risk-based. So if something goes wrong and we can't offset it by a reduction in another area, there's a reserve that we can call on straight away. As the Section 151 officer, I have to confirm in the budget setting that that's at an appropriate level, which I've confirmed for this financial year. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeldon, did you have a question?
Cindy, you go for it, I'll come in at the end.
Okay.
Or I'll go now, Jenny.
Sorry. Good question.
Okay, Councillor Wheeldon first.
It's just a comment, really. I think Craig has explained it so well. Having dealt with big budgets and blue chip corporations and so on in the past when I had a real job, one of the things that you have to remember is that you can budget for things. You can be as tight as a drum, but what you're looking at is what's been and what is. You can forecast what there's going to be, but it is a moment in time when you write that budget. You're then at the mercy of any change in legislation, change in government, change in focus, demands of all sorts of things, the world markets, let alone our local markets and our national markets. So you have to balance. You can guesstimate what you think is, in fact, better than guesstimate, you can give a darn good estimate of what is going to be, but then you're at the mercy of all these other things, and you have to have that lightness of foot and deftness of hand to be able to adjust slightly on what you would really like it to be, just to make sure that you are permanently solvent. Just a comment.
Councillor Walton.
Yeah, just a quick question. How much money's been spent already on the council restructuring costs? How much money's already been spent on looking at the council restructuring? Yeah. After that budget.
Yeah, quite minimal so far. The 400 grand's pretty much intact. We've had we've had an apprentice in one service to help support some data collection and data review around performance. Not an awful lot on top of that, really. We had a little bit of training, so really minimal so far. Pretty much all of the work has been done to get to the point we're at now within existing resources, but there is going to be a need to call on that 400 grand pretty soon after we get a decision one way or another.
A few more questions for you. Regarding the budget management, are there any services which are currently at risk of overspending?
Everything, there's some risk within every budget, isn't there? As we've touched on previously, maybe around sickness or agency, but there's lots and lots of work that's gone into it. We're particularly rigorous, I would say, when we set our budgets. We look at what's been spent previously within services and different cost centres, and we require all our budget holders to sign their lives away on a budget holder form that outlines all of their responsibilities, what they can be called to account for not doing, and we have financial procedure rules that they have to follow. As such, it's quite a broad statement, this is, but I would say very little overspending of budgets takes place. The main area in the last couple of years has been the under recovery on the income side. But we've done lots of work via the MTFS to align the income budgets much more with the actual levels of income that are being received. So as I touched on when I gave my opening spiel, we're a bit under income. Well, we were under income on J2 because of the roof closure, car parking and bereavement services. So the income budgets in two of those areas, car parking and bereavement services, have been reduced to align with the actual levels of income that we're seeing. So this year, all things being well and touching wood and everything, I don't think we'll be far out at all.
Thank you. Regarding capital and assets, are our capital projects on time and on budget?
Yeah, so last year we budgeted for 30-something million pounds of capital expenditure. We spent about 8 million under that. So there was some delay around some of the town deals funding that's part of that. So that's moved forward into this year. So just a reprofiling of budget. In terms of the three major regeneration projects, they're probably going to be a bit underspent, which is a really positive position to be in. Time-wise, York Place, so Astley Place, will be the first project completed, and that's highly likely to be completed in December or January, which is a couple of months ahead of schedule. So the work C&C have done in partnership with the council and their contractors has really driven things along, perhaps a bit quicker than what we anticipated. So a really good position, I would say.
Thank you. Last question. Are there any assets which are underused, of poor value, or no longer aligned with the council's priorities?
Okay, so we have an asset management strategy, and the aim of that strategy is to reduce operational expenditure to do with our assets that we hold and increase commercial property income. We have over 180 properties, ranging from crematorium to sports centres and commercial industrial units. We generate around about £1 million worth of income a year, and under the new administration's instruction, we've recently undertaken an exercise to identify which of our commercial properties might not be performing as well as we would otherwise like. They will all be reviewed by the Capital Review Group, which Councillor Shaw chairs, where they'll be looked at to determine whether we keep them as they are, whether we invest in them to make them better and more attractive and we can gain better rents on, or whether we need to market them for sale. And those decisions will form part of the refreshed asset management strategy that will come back to this committee for scrutiny later on in the year ahead of the budget being set.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. As some people know, yesterday we did a community clear-up in Crossheath of a park, and the council kindly allowed us to use some of the resources, which was the town ranger dispose of everything. We got rid of two truckloads of rubbish and 150 bottles and cans, but we wouldn't have got anywhere near that done. Please excuse the preamble. But a guy turned up to volunteer with sort of heavy equipment, trimmers and hedge cutters and a leaf blower. And he did more in 15 minutes than we'd done in the previous hour once he turned up. I was surprised at the lack of equipment that the very well-intended town ranger, the only town ranger, came with, which was battery-powered hedge cutters and things. Is there any reason that we don't provide them with more equipment so they can get more done and be more effective? And is there anything if there is a reason for it, is there anything we can do to correct that?
Firstly, very well done. That's an impressive amount of rubbish to move. We have a capital programme and requests come for funding from capital programme for plant, equipment and machinery. As far as I'm aware, the street scene team especially are particularly well resourced in terms of equipment. If there are things that we could do differently or better equipment we could get, then I'd request the service director and business manager for street scene to bring those forward to the capital review group as quickly as they can.
Thank you. Is the park ranger part of the street scene team? It's a case of bringing But it would be a case of bringing the two teams together to look at what resources they've got between them and maybe sharing that. But for a minimal cost of maybe £1,000 plus training, plus ongoing maintenance, etc., etc. Yeah, it seems like a very quick payback if you can do 5-10 times the work, given a small investment like that.
We can certainly look into what happened, but as Craig said, our teams are really well resourced, and I think perhaps it was just an idiosyncrasy of the fact that this person was, parachuted in to help, sort of ad hoc, as it were. Our street scene teams, who would normally do maintenance, ground clearance, etc., are very well resourced, and I think maybe it was just a difference in terms of what they had been asked to. A park clearance could be litter, it could be, heavy machinery, and I think that possibly could have been the situation.
Yeah, I didn't explain at the beginning. It was an unadopted path that the council's not task up or don't.
Sure.
There's a common denominator here.
So like I said, maybe it was across teams. It's not right. Next to that one. I will get my word in.
So we did not sabotage you.
So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a genuine question about how can we do that, because it's an unadopted area, or it's the joint responsibility, I don't know, churchyards and the like. But obviously the community's got a pride. They want to do this, but they don't have the equipment. The council aren't responsible for that particular area. The park ranger turns up, but said that equipment was not up to the job. And he was a great guy. Lucas is a fantastic guy. But how can we help people to help themselves?
I think maybe the MMF team and street scene need to have a little chat and see about how they can best serve you.
Absolutely will do.
If it's any help, Councillor Harrison, quite a few of the wards launched their own little zone of civic pride in the spring. There was daffodil planting, there was rubbish collection, there was the refurbing. I'm talking about my ward in particular now, of the allotment area, and there is a road up there that's to get to it. I mean, I nearly launched my car in a couple of ditches just getting along to the allotments. But there is when we met by the little zone of shops in Thistlebury, we had Aspire there, we had the police there, we had volunteers there, we had councillors there. There were all sorts of people there. There's quite a tribe, and we all proudly took pictures. So each zone has got their own little civic pride going on, which was launched, and we're hoping that it'll carry on. So what they're doing is their version of civic pride for their area, but tying in with the general thing of what we're trying to do to make Newcastle beautiful, or keep Newcastle beautiful, if that's any help.
Thank you.
Yes, it's working. So is that simply, thank you. Is that simply officer, is that simply a coordination issue then you're saying about street scene? Because Councillor Harrison's touched on the issue of street scene and volunteers not coordinating together. And we had a similar issue in Audley where we gathered up 30 bags of green waste in the churchyard in a cleaning up campaign, but the street scenes, I believe it was street scenes, I might be corrected by Councillor Machin, wouldn't take them because it was too much of a quantity. Is it a coordination issue?
Without knowing the detail of the situation, I can't really say, but obviously the street scene have got their own rounds to do, and whether they didn't have the capacity on that day, it's a guess. I don't know. We'd have to sort of look into that particular issue itself. But we do have a number of teams that do slightly different things as well. So I think it's just worth getting in touch with the right people. Okay, we can give you the details and the names who to contact.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on. Is the committee happy to note the contents of the report and appendices and continue to monitor and challenge the Council's service and financial performance for the forthcoming periods? Thank you very much. Item 5 of the agenda is the work programme, which details the reports that the committee is expected to scrutinise for the municipal year. As Chair, I would like to add the following. 1. A review of Council reserves, earmarked funds and risk exposure to ensure the Council is financially resilient but not holding money unnecessarily when residents are under pressure. 2. A review of procurement and contract management, looking at whether major contracts are delivering value for money and whether performance monitoring is robust enough. 3. A review of the costs associated with net zero, climate-related spending and associated policies, so members can clearly see what has been spent, what is committed, and where savings can be made. Would the committee like to add any other items to the work programme? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I was making some notes during the previous debate, which was quite wide-ranging, which is right for the committee's first meeting. I think it did extend into areas that weren't quite on the report that we were considering. I've got 3 things that I've noted down. The first is the commercial strategy, and I know we discussed bereavement services income being below target and the target being adjusted down, but we are due to consider the commercial strategy at the September meeting. Would it be appropriate within that report to have some discussion about how we are increasing or hoping to increase bereavement services income? Because it's one thing to reduce the budget and to lower our expectations, but actually I was at June Cabinet and there are some exciting things in the nature of pet crematorium to be commissioned, and every possibility that that service can generate more income and be more financially viable in the future. If it's not appropriate for that to be considered under that report, would we consider having a standalone report on that, on bereavement services? I don't know what your thoughts are, Chair, or what our officer thinks.
Yes, excellent. Are any other committee members who would like to add any other work programme?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if, and clearly it all depends on any announcement that may come out, whether we should have, and this would be for later in the year, a review of costs, potential costs associated with LGR, because they could be quite substantial.
Good.
Will be quite substantial. But clearly that's dependent on what is announced or not announced this month. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
Just adding to what Councillor Lefroy has said, one of the things that worries me about this LGR thing is the idea of I would want to know, and I haven't seen anything to do with it, where the risk management comparisons are, where the cost benefit analysis has come from for the last 2 years. I have to justify these sorts of things in my head, and it has to be evidenced for me, and I haven't seen any evidence. I've seen decisions, and I've seen a lot of flag waving and tub thumping, but I haven't seen any justification. And whether we can find that out or not, I don't know, because it is a governmental thing rather than a local thing. I think it was left to locally, we'd all stay just as we are, but our hands are tied. So, all right, if you're going to make us do it, then justify it to us financially. And I think that's what we've got to focus on, and it's part of our remit of this committee to actually at least send the message upwards. I know things are supposed to cascade down. Let's cascade up for a change.
Officer Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick comments on the work programme bits. I think bereavement will bring as part of the commercial strategy rather than as a separate item. And then for your proposals, Chair, the review of reserves and net zero costs or savings, whichever way that may be, they will be included as part of the budget setting process. So again, no need for separate reports, I wouldn't suggest, but maybe we just have a particular focus on those when we're reviewing both the MTFS and any savings that come afterwards, if you're agreeable to that.
Yes, thank you. Are there any other committee members wish to add? Councillor Holland.
I had one more. We did refer to it a little while ago. We've not had at this committee a standalone report on the asset management strategy since September 2023. And given the changes that the new administration will be bringing to that and the focus on some of our commercial assets and the way in which those are going to be reviewed, would it be appropriate for us to have a report on the asset management strategy at some point during this coming year? I know we've added quite a lot of things to our agenda, but it is an important thing to consider.
I'll second that. Officer Turner.
That should also come as part of the budget setting papers, but again, we can highlight it to make sure it's included a bit more prominently.
Thank you. Are the committee happy that the work programme discussed be noted? Yes. Item 6 of the agenda is public question time. There has been no public questions logged. Item 7 of the agenda is urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business. The date of the next meeting of the committee is the 10th of September 2026. That concludes the meeting for this evening. Thank you all for attending. Thank you.